Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back this week, and we're going to start today's show off with a story of redemption, or is it redemption, or something along those lines, because I think a couple of amazing things happened on Sunday, and maybe one was actually on Saturday. The first is obviously the biggest sports news in the world, and that would be that Tiger Woods won the Masters. And I, for one, last week I was listening to a preview of the Masters, and somebody had said, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, he had picked Tiger Woods to win it. But they were in part of the discussion. He said, it's the kind of year with the kind of course that some guy you'd never heard of could win the Masters. And honestly, everybody knows who Tiger Woods is, but I would say that he qualifies as somebody you would have never really just picked off the street to win the Masters. I mean, maybe people pick him up every year, but he's been so down and so inconsistent in recent years that he's just not the Tiger Woods we know. And then the other story of redemption is Will Wade keeping his job at LSU, but we'll get to that one next. How about that Tiger Woods thing first?
It was a great story.
Yeah.
And if I'm not a golf guy that I'm watching every tournament that they play, but I keep up with it.
Yeah.
And if you've paid attention to Tiger Woods, I thought was on the verge of winning. I mean, he won a tournament last year. He was in the final. He took the lead in the British Open. He was in the final top 5 of the PGA tournament, and actually won the last event last year on the on tour. So this year he had been. If you just kind of watched him play, the only thing he hasn't really done well. He hadn't been putting great.
Yeah,
but his weakness from the last so many years is his drive has been awful, and he has kind of corrected that. So I thought personally, I'm not trying to be second hand or Monday morning quarterback. I thought he had a legitimate shot at winning, and he's won it 4 times.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a course that he's very familiar with, and I mean, it is a tremendous story. I'll be honest with you. He is now part of his downfall was his own making.
Oh, yeah. Almost all of it, really, when you get down to it.
Other than the injury. I mean, he had the ACL, and then he had 2 major back surgery. Now, that's not, that's not his fault, but that's serious stuff, overcoming back surgery. Now, the other stuff, when the divorce and some of the other scandalous things he got into, that's his own making. Mm-hmm. But, to come back after not winning a major in over 10 years at the age of 43, and to, he's missed 2 or 3 almost solid years from the tour, to come back and win and to beat a field that he win is quite impressive. And I'll be honest with you, it was I haven't seen the ratings, but it's got to be skyrocket.
Yeah.
Because it was when during his heyday, it was kind of 50-50 split. Some were for him, some people were against Tiger. It seemed like to me it was almost 95% of the people there were cheering as hard as you could for one person.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I was for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was pretty neat to come back the way he came back and to win and he looked like since his return the last couple of years, he seems to be a softer person, a better person. He tends to smile more and things.
He's gotten some wisdom.
He does, and he was fantastic yesterday.
Yeah.
And but it's like any sporting event in which there's a comeback. There has to also be at times somebody has to make a big mistake for you. Mm-hmm. And it was Molinari, who I didn't think would make those mistakes because he has he's a heck of a player and tough too.
Yeah.
And normally when he gets the lead, he doesn't choke or anything like that. But he gave not only Tiger, but he gave the field an opportunity when he double bogeyed 12, and then came back and double bogeyed again.
Yeah.
And that opened the door. And Tiger didn't. He was. It's not like Tiger shot 65 on the last day.
Yeah.
Shot 70, which is 2 under. Now, he probably could have shot 69, but he played the last hole smartly. All he had to do was bogey, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
But it's not like he shot 65, and there were other people up there like my boy Brooks Koepka, who was really good too.
Yeah.
And but I thought it was a great story, and it's if you're a golf fan, there's nothing better in golf than right now Tiger Woods up there because he drives the ratings.
You mentioned the British Open, and you mentioned the fact that Tiger Woods had been in the hunt in some majors in the last year. But I think the British Open was after that one, people had decided that Tiger Woods no longer had that closing mentality.
No, that's foolish.
But you look at it, you just pointed out something. He didn't necessarily close this one. He didn't have the lead. He didn't close the door. You go back in his history. Used to, if you entered Sunday and he was in the lead, everybody else might as well go home.
Right, but he wasn't in the lead. That's the difference.
Yeah.
He was 2 shots out of it.
Yeah.
And once he got the lead, he didn't catch him, and they didn't. He grabbed the lead after 15, and he birdied the next.
Yeah,
and then finished it, and he didn't choke it. There was plenty of things he could have choked it out, and he didn't choke. He put the ball in the right spot, and where other people had opportunities, they didn't take advantage of it, and he did. And he's probably there's a couple of people. Michael Jordan was one. Tiger Woods another. Just mentally, Tom Brady. I'm amazed at those people at that level, at their mental toughness.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Jordan made every big shot there was.
Yeah.
It seemed like Tom Brady always comes through when he has to.
Right.
It seems like Tiger Woods, I've just never in my lifetime ever seen him choke. Now, I've seen him not make a putt here or there, but I've never seen him choke. Give up a lead.
Yeah, he hasn't had one of those Phil Mickelson kind of days.
He never does.
Gary.
He knows, not only is he probably the best golfer in terms of just talent-wise, he's probably the smartest golfer there is today. He's him and Nicklaus and whatever. Just that he's got the and that's the way Jordan and Brady are too. They got the perfect combination.
Yeah,
physically gifted and also mentally tough. Mentally tough and smart. That's why Tiger is. He's fascinating to watch. I mean, he's not flashy anymore. He's not like John McEnroe when he played tennis. Cussing out umpires and breaking rackets. He really doesn't do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's incredible TV. There's not a lot of golfers that I'd watch. He's one of them.
The thing about I'm just not a golf fan on any level, and the fact that we were, I guess, opening the show, kind of talking about this in the angle of redemption. Is I guess telling about Tiger Woods, and I never had a problem with him, when he first entered the tour, and a lot of people had a problem with how, because he was demonstrative, he was not necessarily emotional, but he was, he'd make a putt, he'd pump his fist, he'd do things that the old traditionalists didn't do,
right?
And a lot of traditionalists didn't like that from him. I didn't have a problem with it because I don't mind somebody. I don't like people stunting on people or, showing them up or whatever, but I don't mind people, expressing themselves if they do something well. I mean, I think that's fine. So I never really had a problem with that part of it. And the fact that the traditionalists did have a problem with it 25 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever it was, made me a little bit more fan of him because I'm like, the reason I don't like golf is it's boring. Mm-hmm. Tiger Woods is not boring. Now, I didn't go grab some clubs and start playing and thinking, hey, I would like to be like Tiger Woods, but I did start paying attention to golf because of Tiger Woods on some level and paid attention to it in his early part of his career. I paid attention to it deeper than I ever had and the players that he played against.
Right.
So, I mean, he does inspire at least people to look at something that they have no interest in otherwise.
There's
a lot
no
of
question.
times. And that's not bad for golf.
No,
it's
good for golf.
Yeah, every time people who are like golfers are complaining about Tiger Woods, I'm like, look, there are people talking about the game that you love, and the only reason you might be complaining about Tiger Woods is because you're number one at the club right now, but somebody else might show up and be better, and you might not like that part of it.
Yeah, or maybe more people are on the course, which takes longer to play.
There's that, too. I mean, basically what it is they want to isolate their game. They don't want to celebrate it. They don't want to share it.
Well,
that's what I feel whenever people complain about it.
It's impressive. I mean, 43, and he beat a tremendous field. And all the, Koepka and Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth and all those other people they grew up watching Tiger, but they didn't play against Tiger during Tiger's heyday.
Yeah.
Because when they emerged when Tiger was either out or down. And this is really this is the first time that they probably had to kind of go head to head with him. And, and you could hear the roar on TV when Tiger made a shot. It just kind of reverberates everywhere.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's a little bit. It can be intimidating. Maybe if you're in that group, it's also, if you're a real good competitor, it can also pump you up. But it seems like the Tiger X factor could be back.
Well, I think it was Jordan Spieth who was, or maybe it was Koepka. One of them, after the British Open or one of the other events, was asked about playing with Tiger Woods, and they were like, "Oh, I love it. Mm-hmm. It motivates me."
Well, that's what they say. Yeah.
Well, and it did at that. Apparently, it worked for them on that particular course on that particular day, and maybe they weren't lying then, but they may not feel the same way after Sunday. Meanwhile, Will Wade has beat back the FBI, and an apparent recording of him doing everything. Spelling the word but not saying it, basically, if you want to look at it that way, about paying a player to come to LSU. And LSU has stuck with him for now. He's been reinstated as men's basketball coach. And I just honestly did not expect that to happen. I just knew there was going to be a coaching search down at LSU. I don't think I was alone.
Well, I mean, how the story goes, he was suspended as the head basketball coach at LSU. Not because he gave a bribe. He was suspended because he would not meet with the president of the university athletic director to go over the story. So they said, well, if you're not going to meet with us, then we're going to suspend you until you meet with us.
Yeah.
Well, after a month and getting lawyering up, they finally went to the meeting, and they had their meeting last Friday. And evidently, the coach, he must be a good recruiter. He convinced the president and AD that there's just not enough evidence against him.
That's not my voice on that tape or something. Who knows what he said?
And LSU went along with it.
Yeah, said, okay, great.
I mean, is this not the SEC or what? I mean, it really is. I mean, what's frustrating to me is that. Well, college sports is, I just, in general, maybe people don't care. Maybe just flat out people don't care. I'm for LSU, or I'm for Arkansas, or I'm for Auburn, and however you get the players, I don't care. That may be where most people are. I think it's a shame to be there.
Yeah.
I just think eventually there has to be rules and things of that nature. Josh Hurt said, when he did his blog, we talked about the high school transfer rules.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a great opinion piece.
Yeah.
But maybe just people just don't care. And it's, I mean, with that FBI probe on just basically catching coaches paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars and this and that.
People may forget we've already had a trial that has finished with
found people guilty. That's right.
So this is not speculation anymore.
The only head coach that's been punished is Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
And he was not implicated directly.
I know.
It was not him on his assistants. He's the only one that's paid a price.
Yeah.
Sean Miller of Arizona, last I checked, is still the head coach at Arizona. Bruce Pearl's assistant, Chuck Person.
Yeah, the rifleman.
Has been found. I think he pled guilty, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's right. Or maybe he hadn't had trials. One of the two. I think he
because there's more than one trial.
Chuck Person of Auburn. Bruce Pearl just got a 5-year extension.
Hey.
I mean, so nobody else has paid any type of price one way or the other, and that's, I'm not saying Bruce Pearl, he may not know anything. I don't know.
We're not implying anyone is guilty who has not pled guilty or been found guilty.
That's exactly right. We're not implying that, but it's just it's just kind of amazing. And Will Wade, I didn't think he'd have a chance.
Me neither.
I mean, I thought it would just be okay, just go, and maybe he'd be hired somewhere else and things like that. He's back at LSU, and maybe it just comes down to people. Maybe they may not care about it. I don't know.
Here's what I think. I think everyone has the institutions, LSU, Auburn, Arizona, any of the others that have been wrapped up in any kind of implications of wrongdoing or cheating the system, so to speak. The institutions themselves have looked over at the uncooperative North Carolina investigation with the NCAA about its academic fraud issue. and
which they won.
Because they did not cooperate at all with the NCAA. I think every institution has taken it that cooperating with the NCAA guarantees you will be penalized.
Well, I don't even know if Auburn or LSU are under investigation. They were under FBI investigation.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the NCAA has done it. Now, just last week, Louisville has just got another notice of investigation, and it came about with this payment to the kid.
Yeah.
I don't know if LSU, Auburn, or Arizona has even got a notice of that they're going to be investigated yet. So I don't even know. I mean, they may not be even under NCAA investigation. I would have a hard time if they don't. It's odd to me.
Yeah.
If it's enough to go where you're indicting coaches for things, I would think it'd be right there for the NCAA to look into what's going on.
I guess, and also here's the other thing, and another example for all these institutions to look at is the Louisville situation, which is,
and they cooperated.
Well, the secondary part of this, Pitino, the athletic director,
fired.
They were fired. They filed lawsuits against the university for wrongful termination. It costs more for the university to fight those lawsuits than it will cost the university to eventually, with cause, let one of these coaches go that are wrapped up in the FBI thing. I think in the bottom line, they reinstate, now the Bruce Pearl extension, you get to the Final Four, I guess you get an extension. You follow the protocols. I'm not sure that in the end these institutions in any way are like standing by these coaches. I think they are standing by their long-term vulnerability to a lawsuit from the coaches. That's the only conclusion I can come to, because the other thing you go back to, maybe nobody cares anymore. I think everybody's in the mindset of, if everybody's speeding down the interstate, why am I driving the speed limit and on this kind of thing? And if everybody's cheating, then why are we?
And everybody's not. And that's the thing. But that's the perception.
Yeah, that is the perception.
But Virginia, which we'll talk about later, I don't think Virginia's cheating.
Well, I'd say the two teams that were in the national title game, you can't look at their rosters and say that they paid money to get any of those players,
right.
Texas Tech and Virginia.
Right.
That's why I was really happy to see them there.
Right.
I was happy to see them there because you have two teams that had long-term players, and like I said, we'll get to that, and that kind of thing. And I thought that made the championship game more interesting to me. I don't care whether or not people were interested in watching those two programs play, but
yep.
The things that I'm interested in college sports, which in my mind at this moment is in a difficult place.
Right, it is. And like I said, I'm not even claiming that they should fire him because I don't know what's on tape. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just thought it was odd to just all of a sudden just say, okay, we're all back in. And I just thought that was an odd – I just thought it was an odd choice. I don't have enough facts, and we don't have enough facts to know what was said. But the university really didn't give a big response either, and maybe there's nothing to it. Maybe it's false reporting. But it is kind of puzzling to notice just the only program that's really given up on their coach and paid price is Louisville.
Yeah,
and everybody else has just kind of moved on and I don't know. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it stands for. I'm not really for sure. It kind of it makes you shake your head a little bit.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, as long as there are billions of dollars literally wrapped up in college sports, there will be some level of fraud and probably malfeasance, because that's just the nature of the corruption of money, I think.
Yeah.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk about the pure high school sports in our area.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, the local high school baseball and softball teams had a full week last week and a full week this week. The only day might be in question would be Thursday. I think we might have a little weather Thursday, but so it's been a full couple of weeks of high school diamond action, and a lot to look forward to, really, and a lot to check out real quick. So we'll just start with the baseball. And I guess the big game this week in the baseball is Barron County at Glasgow tomorrow. which should be an interesting contest. The Trojans won 2 of 3 games last week. They won a district game against Monroe County, and then they beat Butler County and lost to Metcalfe County 1-0. And Glasgow, early in the season, we were discussing the fact that they were giving up a lot of runs and struggling, obviously, defensively and with pitching. But they've gotten things turned around. They've won 5 straight. Last week, they beat Allen County 10-7. Then they beat Franklin Simpson 6-5 in extra innings. That was a quality win. And they beat LaRue County 13-6. Now, during the regular season in the last few years, those are 2 teams they've really struggled to beat, and so those were 2 quality wins for the Scotties.
Yeah, they're 2 good baseball programs. Franklin's been a regional champion here lately, and they've got a long tradition. LaRue has generally been one of the better teams in the 5th region.
Yeah.
So those are two good wins, plus they throw in the district win, in which they were way up on Allen. They were up like 10-2. I think Allen rallied and scored 4 or 5 in the 6 or whatever, but they were comfortably ahead of them, and it seems like they've kind of got things kind of straightened out after a rough kind of first week of the season, which they were giving up a lot of runs. And it seems like they've kind of found their way, and they're the only team in the district with a winning record. Mm-hmm. And, as usual, Coach Royce has played a good schedule, too. They played Central Hardin and Grayson County. They played a lot of good teams. Manual, I believe.
Yep.
And to get it to 8-5 and 5 straight, that's a good sign for the Scotties. And they've got I don't think they have a dominant pitcher right now, but it seems like they're getting the job done on the mound. And the big thing is they're scoring a lot of runs.
Yeah. I was looking. It looks like Jaden Franklin has made it back. He was out for all of basketball season with a knee injury. And the KHSAA stats, which is something they started doing on there this year for baseball and softball, which is great.
Yeah, if you turn them in.
Yeah, if you turn them in. It's up to the coaches or the coaches to get somebody to turn them in.
Well, they're supposed to. If you don't keep them relatively up to date, there's supposed to be some type of fine. So,
yeah.
If it's enforced, I'm not for sure. And how much some coaches are reluctant to do it in baseball and basketball. They think you're giving away too many stats to your opposing whatever. So I think that's a little overrated, but they do. A free throw. You put your team individual free throw percentages up. Somebody's at 42%. It may be something that the other coach may not know. It may help you in late situations. Things like that.
How hard is it, though, for opposing coaches to just find that info if they want it?
I don't know how you can find it unless it's posted that way. I mean, coaches aren't giving away each other's stats. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can go scout and watch players shoot, and you may think, well, he's not a very good shooter, but you wouldn't have his percentage per se.
Well, but in the old days, I mean, you guys would talk to each other, right, and kind of have an idea about your upcoming opponents and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you would talk, but nobody knows. Well, yeah, this guy's a 38% free throw shooter. I mean, that wouldn't process.
I imagine though they would say that dude can hit anything you throw at the plate, and then they would say, well, that dude can't hit a thing that you throw at the plate.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. Anyway, that's kind of off track, but. I appreciate the fact that they're doing those stuff.
I am too. I think it's good for the kids.
Yeah, I do too. Because look, one of the things about stats, talking about this real quick, is that everybody, when it comes to baseball especially, everybody kind of has their own little way of keeping up with it.
You got to be, that's right, and you're relying on the head coach of that school to be accurate on the stats. It's some people give whatever's hit a hit.
Yeah.
So it should be an error, and other people may be a little bit tougher too. So
I'd say take them with a grain of salt, at least a dash of salt.
I agree with that.
Now, so what I was getting to though is that Jaden Franklin is back, and he's hitting 500 right now for the Scotties. So I'm sure that has helped them offensively, getting him in the lineup.
Right, it is. He's a good player, and he's got good pop in his bat, and so forth. And he's somebody that's it can't hurt you to have him in the middle of the lineup.
No, and so that. They've turned it around. That leads to a pretty big game tomorrow with Barron County. And Glasgow won the first meeting 10-2 after they got down early in that game and committed some errors. And Barron County, they lost 1-0 to Metcalfe on Friday, I think it was.
Yep.
And that was Metcalfe's second win. So I'm sure the Trojans are itching to kind of get things going back in the right direction.
No, I was there. I was impressed with Metcalfe. I told assistant coach Scott Gillen after the game, I said, they sure don't look like a team that's only 1-2.
Yeah.
I mean, they looked and if you look at Metcalf's record, they've lost a lot of like 5-4, 6-5 game. It was a well pitched game, well played game. Barron's 5-9, and they did get a win against Monroe, which is a big win. Justin Combs got that win, 2-1. And Barron's 1-1 in the district. Glasgow's 2-0 in the district. So I mean, it's obviously for seeding purposes a game that probably Barron needs tomorrow.
Yeah, and meanwhile the Trojans, they play at Warren Central today, and then they host the Dare County on Friday, and they play Saturday in the Kelly Russell Classic at Russellville. Is that one of those wooden bat things, or
I don't know?
Okay, they used to do a wooden bat thing, didn't they, over there?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that's kind of what they have coming up, and then along with the game tomorrow that between Glasgow and Barron, the Scotties also play at Edmondson on Thursday, and then they get to host Metcalf on Friday, and they're taking on Warren East Saturday. Playing at Warren East Saturday morning. Warren East, they may have a great pitcher, but they're not doing so well overall over there. The Raiders aren't.
Well, again, look at their schedule too. I mean, they've that district is they play those 3-game series too.
Oh yeah,
and I think South Warren's good, Bowling Green's good, Greenwood's good. That's a pretty. You can pile some losses up and not leave that. I think the only weak team is Warren Central.
Yeah, they are down this year. Meanwhile, in softball, Barron County won 4 games last week. They are 17-2. That's the second best record in the region behind 17-0 Warren East.
Either Coach Murphy, when he was in here, was sandbagging, or
seems like it,
or he's extremely surprised to be 17-2 with the amount of freshmen they're playing.
Yeah,
I mean, they're starting like 4 freshmen. The pitchers are freshmen, catchers are freshmen. I mean, and to be 17-2, and if you just look at their games, it's most of them not even close.
No, they've been killing folks.
They really have, and they're 3-0 in the district. Now they've beaten Monroe twice and Glasgow once. So they have yet to play Allen, but and they do play Allen Tuesday and they play at Glasgow Thursday.
Yeah,
but they are, other than Monroe, who's undefeated. Monroe's 15-0.
Yeah,
I mean, Barron has probably been the most impressive team in the region this year.
Yeah, and you know what I would say, he may or may not have been sandbagging, but I would definitely say he thought he had some talented young players. You just don't expect them to be this consistent early,
right.
I think. And that's been the key. I mean, they've played well game in and game out despite, I mean, the one blip with Russellville, which Russellville may actually be pretty good.
They blew out Glasgow Friday, and I think they're 12-3. And I was talking to the assistant coach at Barron, and she told me their pitcher of Russellville is really, really good.
Yeah,
really good.
So they may be the surprise team. Now Barron does get a good test today because they play Logan County.
Logan County's
which
good.
I think is 11-3.
Yeah, that'd be a good test. That'd be a good test. But I think the freshman pitcher has been better than advertised, and she throws it good and has pretty good composure and poise out there, and she hits it good too. She helps her calls a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they have to be obviously extremely pleased with 17-2. There's several teams that hadn't quite played 11 games. They're already at 19.
Yeah.
Hadn't had very many rainouts at all.
Yeah.
And have gotten a lot of games in.
Speaking of 11 games, that's exactly how many Glasgow has played. They're 3-8. They lost 3 games last week, including the 2 district games to Barron and Allen. They play at Bowling Green today. They host Monroe tomorrow, which they've already lost to in the district. And
they need that one.
And they do need that one,
yeah,
yes.
They need the Monroe win.
And then they play, as you mentioned, Barron on Thursday. I guess the converse is true for the Lady Scotties versus the Trojanettes. You having some experienced players for the Lady Scotties that probably Coach Stephen Murphy was expecting a little more out of at this point in the season.
Well, Amanda Lee's played well.
Yes.
She's had 2 or 3 home runs, I believe, and she's playing well. I think they've had trouble. They've given up a lot of runs. Now, I don't know if it's all pitching or if it's defense or whatever, but it's just if you look at their scores, they've had a hard time. They've been giving up just most of their losses have been giving up 10 or more runs.
Yeah,
and that puts a lot of pressure, obviously, on the offense.
Yeah, and they have hit it pretty well in recent years, but it's hard to keep up that pace if you're giving up that many runs in softball. It just is.
Yep.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, the NBA playoffs tipped off over the weekend, and I watched the most of only one game. That would be the Milwaukee Bucks, and while we were off air, I couldn't even remember who they were pummeling because it was so lopsided. But, yes, they were pummeling Detroit, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is like, I think he's the most fun player to watch in the NBA right now.
He's a heck of a player. Athletic, beyond athletic, but also is skilled to go with that athleticism. And he's very likable.
He is.
If you can say it, he's a humble superstar. Now, it's hard to say that very often in the NBA.
Yeah.
But he seems to get it.
I would say he's a throwback player because you can also tell he enjoys playing.
Yeah.
I mean, he just plays fun.
What I like about Milwaukee, and I've seen him play a couple of times, is it's not only Giannis, but they play unbelievably well together. It's a bunch of no names, really. I mean, Eric Bledsoe, people around here know because they played at Kentucky.
Yeah, nobody in the NBA does.
But there's just a lot of players, and the coach the coach won at Atlanta, and I can't even pronounce his last name.
Budenholzer.
Yes, and he's decided. They shoot more threes than anybody in the league, so they spread the floor. They got shooters everywhere, which opens the lane for Giannis, and they can and they just play so hard, and it's rare to see NBA teams as a collective group. Now, it helps when your best player like Giannis plays hard.
Yeah, it sets a tone. That
sets the tone. That's the way Jordan was.
Yeah,
and they are so connected as a group. And I mean, they got a kid that I haven't seen play since he was in college. I thought he was out of the league, but he's the kid out of Notre Dame, Conisty, who was a really good ACC player, kind of a shooter, but he was kind of tweener, 6'5", 6'6". He's playing major minutes, and I mean, there's a couple teams I like. I like them.
Yeah.
And that was,
to your point about no names and people, or I didn't know they were still in the league. They have Brook Lopez on that team
playing well. He was another one that Magic Johnson got rid of. I mean, he wasn't good enough to play for LA. And he's a great team guy too, and he really helps that team. I like them. I mean, it was a funny weekend because the best teams did what they're supposed to.
Yeah,
and I think the best teams are Milwaukee. They destroyed Detroit. Golden State handled the Clippers.
Yeah.
Houston blew out Utah last night. Those three did what they were supposed to. Boston won too.
Yeah.
Philadelphia looked horrible against Brooklyn. Now, Brooklyn's another team that most people you could start on the street, just stop and ask, can you name two people that play for Brooklyn?
I couldn't name two people that play for Brooklyn.
I mean,
I tell you what,
the kid from Ohio State, Russell.
Yeah,
he's one. Again, that's another Magic Johnson trade.
Yeah. Brooklyn says thank you.
That's correct. And that's another team. If you just watch them, you go, man, that group, they play hard. I mean, there's no superstars on that team, and they just flat out get after you. And if you just watch that game, they played harder than Philadelphia.
Oh yeah,
and they just flat out beat Philadelphia at Philadelphia. Now, will they win the series? I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
The NBA rule is the superstars win out. The problem with Philadelphia right now is one of their superstars is obviously hurt, Joel Embiid.
That's correct.
He did not defend well at all, and you could tell his motion was limited by his knee.
Right.
And I actually thought he probably should have just sat the game out because it looked like he was hurting his team.
Well, that's why, and they play best of 7, and so there's not the upsets like in college where you're one and done.
Yeah.
One game and you can win or lose, makes your season. It's not always the best team win. Generally in the NBA, the best team wins after over 7 games.
Right.
But we'll see. You're right. Embiid is hurt.
Ben Simmons still can't shoot.
He still can't shoot. I thought they made too many changes, too many trades, and then it's just an indication of maybe what's going on. They got booed at home. And
Philly does not like Philly fans do not like that kind of stuff.
But they were the worst franchise in basketball up until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So They have turned on them quick, and then you add the cell phone on the bench deal, which has made big news. By I think his name is Johnson.
Yeah,
and,
Amir Johnson.
Amir Johnson, and
is he a Cincinnati player? Is that where he was? Originally?
Yeah. And looking in that, and he's been fined. He may have been suspended, but that's a terrible look. During the NBA playoffs game, you got a player on there looking at his cell phone.
Yeah,
and to me, it's lack of discipline, and it tells you maybe something internally what's wrong with the team a little bit. If you have a player that cares either he said is checking on his daughter. Now I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah,
but I got my suspicion antennas up on that one. but it also tells you something about maybe the culture there is not as tight as it should be.
The two things. One is any team that Jimmy Butler is on, that's Jimmy Butler's team. Everybody else might as well get used to it. And that, I think, is disruptive no matter where he is. I think he's a great addition talent-wise to Philadelphia as he was during the course of the season. But if you don't live – Jimmy Butler is talking about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan punished his teammates so much that the opposition could do nothing to them if you went to practice with Michael Jordan and that kind of stuff. I say punished mentally and probably physically. Jimmy Butler strikes me as that kind of player too, except he's not Michael Jordan, so he doesn't demand the respect.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the credentials that everybody else is going to fall in with him, and I'm not sure that kind of thing would play these days in the NBA. So there's that. The other thing is, you want to talk about a contrast and comparison. You take Giannis Antetokounmpo at Milwaukee. He came in the NBA as like an 18-year-old raw athlete out of Greece.
Right.
And then you take Ben Simmons, who's pedigreed in every way, coming into the NBA.
From Australia.
To
LSU.
Now, I think Ben Simmons, though, I think he played a year of like a preparatory school or something before he went to LSU, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
And so he had the exposure, plus, wasn't his dad an NBA player?
Yes.
And so he had all the exposure. He's done nothing in 3 years to improve his game. He looks exactly the same now as he did when he came out of LSU. He can't shoot. Giannis Antetokounmpo is turning himself into a guy who can actually hit a jump shot, hit an outside shot. You can tell each year he adds to his game.
I agree. I think he's
totally different.
I think he's the best player in the game.
Yeah,
I like him better than any player. I think he's, I think you can make an argument for Durant, but all Durant does is get teed up and get thrown out anymore. I'm tired of.
I know he lets Patrick Beverly get into his head.
He does. The NBA is hard at times to watch just because of college has their issues. We talked about some of the issues that college has. The pro game, at least those guys are getting paid, so that satisfies that one deal. I don't think anybody's cheating or anything like that. So everybody is on the up and up that way. But the complaining constantly to officials over and over and over just gets old, and it's hard to watch. That's one of the reasons why I like Giannis. I don't see that a lot with them.
Yeah, what's the other team that you really like?
I like Boston.
Yeah,
I do like Boston, but I think they've been.
I like Boston minus Kyrie Irving.
Well, no, and their dynamics of their team changed.
Yeah,
again with a superstar who sometimes didn't play well with others.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it, and they just took a team that was, I call it, connected with each other, shared the ball and so forth, and now they don't look quite as connected anymore.
I'll tell you 3 other teams that I actually like as well, and they're all in the Western Conference. I like the Portland Trail Blazers. I like Damian Lillard as wild as he is, but he's really turned into a different kind of player than he was earlier.
Good dude.
He is. He seems to be. And you talking about a guy who leads a team by example. The players around him obviously trust him,
right?
And that's why Portland's in the playoffs, because they're a collection of talent-wise. They're not really that great compared to some other teams. I also like the San Antonio Spurs. Same principle,
right?
That one feeds from the head coach.
Yeah, they don't have very many superstars either.
No, LaMarcus Aldridge is a good player, but
he's not a great player.
Yeah,
and then
DeMar DeRozan is the guy they got in the trade.
Yeah, name some other ones.
And that's about it.
Rudy Gay, and then where?
Rudy Gay, he's another. Is he still in the league?
Yes,
I can't believe it.
But name some of the other ones.
Yeah.
You're talking about a culture and well coached.
Yeah. And then the other team I like is the Denver Nuggets, because they're a collection of misfits, And you kind of have two different NBAs right now. You have an NBA that is superstars and superstars on teams together. Then you have these groups of also rans or budding superstars, and they are teams that have gelled into playoff teams
with a lot of no names.
A lot of no names,
but they play hard.
Yeah, and so I mean the one melding of those two things seems to be Milwaukee, which is why I guess I'm rooting for them.
I can't argue with you. I'm same boat.
Yep. And real quick, you mentioned there was a coaching change, two coaching changes, I guess, technically over the weekend or late last week that are kind of interesting for us. Mick Cronin leaves Cincinnati and takes the UCLA job.
Yes.
Looked like they were holding on to get Chris Beard, is it, from Texas Tech? And
guess not.
Guess not. I mean, it took all that time to get the guy from Cincinnati. That's surprising.
And clearly not their first choice.
Yeah, and then that leads to John Brennan leaving
Northern
Kentucky and taking the Cincinnati job, which means the NKU job is open. Obviously, Brennan did a really good job recruiting-wise and
did a great job
coaching-wise in 3 years there.
Yes, they went from a Division II team to a Division I team during his tenure, and they've been in the NCAA tournament two out of the 3 years they've been eligible, I believe.
Yep, that's right. So what do you think real quick about the Cronin taking the UCLA job?
I don't see the fit. Personally, and I like Rick Pitino, and Cronin was one of his assistants.
Yeah.
He was a Pitino assistant. I've never really liked the style of play that Cincinnati played under him.
It's brutal.
It is brutal. It's they don't do never have really had a great shooting team. He's won 25, 28 games. They'll get to the NCAA tournament, but to me, that style doesn't play well.
Yeah.
The NCAA tournament and those officials are better officials. They're not going to let you just sling people around. I don't see the fit at UCLA. Now, does UCLA need more discipline after Steve Alford? Yes. There's a complete lack of toughness.
Yeah.
If you watch them play, they guard nobody. Well, that'll change.
Right.
That will definitely change. But does Coach Cronin would he get me fired up as a fan of UCLA basketball? No.
You're not looking up there and saying, "Oh, that's John Wooden," or
no.
Or some of the other people that have been there.
That was somebody I didn't see.
Yeah,
I didn't see that in any way. I mean, I thought they may go Luke Walton over rather than him.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Now the Brennan to Cincinnati move means he doesn't have to leave his house.
I think it's a great hire.
Yeah, no, that's a totally great hire for Cincinnati.
I think it's a great hire. I think they are. Now listen, Cincinnati was always competitive and made the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
I think this guy could even do better.
Yep.
With the resources Cincinnati has, I think he's a really good coach.
And he's also proven he's really good at finding talent.
Yes, and he should have a better recruiting base at Cincinnati, I would think.
Yep. All right, Alyssa Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to talk about the men's national championship game and probably a little bit more about college basketball.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
All right, John. Monday, a week ago, it's amazing how time flies. A week ago, Virginia beat Texas Tech for the national title. I thought it was a good game. I enjoyed the game. Overtime. It was a good finish. There were some great shots. You could tell in the overtime that looked like Texas Tech basically ran out of gas in overtime. Virginia being big and physical looked like they finally took control of the game. Texas Tech was kind of lucky to be there anyway.
Well, Texas Tech had the opportunity to beat them.
Yes.
And like about 4 teams did this year against Virginia.
Right. They were living a blessed life, not on borrowed time.
They were up 3 with less than 20 seconds to go, and the best defensive team in the country, which is Texas Tech, statistically made a crucial error where they left a player in the corner to stop a penetrating guard, which was Ty Jerome, drove to the basket, had a layup, and the guy leaves DeAndre Hunter from the corner to come in and stop him.
Yeah.
Which what you do is you give up the layup. You're still up 1, And Jerome, as usual, makes the right play, kicks it to Hunter, and Hunter makes a big three of 12 seconds to go.
Yeah.
Ties the game, and Virginia gets a stop, and after that, Virginia dominated overtime.
Yeah.
So Texas Tech had that chance, and Virginia, for the third time in a row, came back from being down in the last 20 seconds to win. And, we talked about Tiger in the first episode of Redemption. There's probably no better story than Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
If people want to, teach lessons, it's Virginia. And I think Virginia, if the NCAA has any sense at all, this is the program that they ought to be celebrating.
Right.
I mean, Tony Bennett, you talk about a class guy.
Mm-hmm.
How he conducts himself, how calm he is, and to come back as the only number one seed in history to lose to a 16 seed. Handily the year before.
Yeah.
And to come all the way back and to win it the next year. I mean, that's a sign of you make movies out of that.
Yeah.
But it's also a sign of toughness. It's not just movies. It's mental toughness. Those kids this year, because I went back and looked at some of this, the Virginia team this year, people forgot. They were down 14 points in the first round again this year to Gardner Webb.
Yeah.
So
yeah, people were like, oh, here we go again.
So that was going through their mind.
Yeah.
And then they overcame that, and then overcame, Purdue, when it looked like Purdue was had them on the ropes, and then Auburn had them on the ropes, and New Mexico State. It's just a great story of I think they do things the right way. Mm-hmm. I may be wrong. But it just seems like the calmness of that program, the mental toughness of those kids to overcome. I love to see people bounce back.
Yeah.
And this team bounced back, and they overcame their anxieties. And I think Kyle Guy admitted that he had some mental counseling. He went some counseling trying to get overcome what he went through last year.
Yeah.
You have to know every game they went through this year when they were 27-2 or 28-1, they kept saying all those signs of losing last year, and that's tough on kids. The pressure that you put on yourself. I would make Tony Bennett the face of basketball if they're smart,
mm-hmm.
and because that's the good side. And if I ever go back in coaching, I would want to be more like him.
Mm-hmm.
That type of calmness and those things like that.
I know the ratings for the national title game were not what they want it to be in terms of TV ratings. I don't know if they're able to measure these days how many people are actually watching online and that kind of stuff.
People go to a bar and watch. There'd be 100 people at a bar, one TV.
Yeah, I don't always trust those ratings.
Watch online too, right?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but here's one thing I do trust. That game I thought was a good game. I thought the two teams in that championship game were two teams that were worth watching.
I agree.
I thought both teams had players that I enjoyed watching play college basketball. I don't think – here's the problem that I have sometimes. People equate college basketball players with their potential as an NBA player, as a professional player. I don't like that.
I don't either.
I like for the college basketball players to be evaluated as college basketball players. Ed Pinckney's one of the greatest college basketball players ever. I mean, he was an okay Boston Celtic, but, I mean, you can never take away what he did as a college basketball player.
To me, Luke Hancock for Louisville.
Yeah, there you go.
A heck of a college player that won Louisville National Championship with his college play. Never played a step in the NBA. I don't know what type of players Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome will be. I know Jerome declared yesterday for the draft.
Yep.
They may end up being really good players, but I know they're great college players.
Yeah. And so, to me, that's why you watch the college basketball championship is not because you're watching future NBA players. You're watching great present college basketball players.
And that was a tremendous game.
It was. Meanwhile, I got to give you a little bit of credit. We're back to this coach hire thing. A couple of weeks ago on this show, you told us who Tennessee would hire as their next women's basketball coach.
I had a feeling. I mean, I was worried about Jeff Walsh. I didn't want Jeff to leave, but they ended up going with the old point guard from Tennessee.
Yep.
Won 3 national titles for Pat Summitt. Kelly, at that time, her name was Kelly Jolly.
Yeah.
And she was one of the first to come back from an ACL injury. She actually played her last few games of her senior year with torn ACL.
Uh-huh.
And her name's Kelly Harper, and she's got fired at North Carolina State. It's a little controversial. She was at North Carolina State for 4 years, got fired, and then took over at Missouri State and really built that program up. And that's who the Lady Vols went with. So I wish her well.
And I tell you, there was one thing interesting about the hire, though. The AD, who is former football coach Philip Fulmer, did not look pleased at the press conference.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was very kind of brusque with her. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure Philip Fulmer should be the AD at Tennessee, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not a Tennessee person, so what do I care? But I felt like maybe he was trying to go for a big splash, and he didn't feel like that one was big enough. Just me reading body language and reading some people's responses to how he kind of handled the whole hiring process, people who are Tennessee fans.
Well, she's definitely qualified. Now, is she considered one of the top 10 coaches in the game? No, she's not. Does she fit probably Tennessee? She does. I still think there is a desire there for, with Pat, and she's a former point guard and played for. But to be honest with you, so was Holly Warwick. She also played there, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I like Kelly Jolly as a player. So I wish her the best. I'm just glad they didn't take Jeff Walsh.
Right.
But did they go after the big guns? Well, it doesn't appear to be.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that she won't be successful either.
I think that Tennessee women's job kind of falls in the same camp as the UCLA men's job at this point in time.
Maybe.
A lot of people have a lot of history tied into it.
Good
and
point.
Belief about the level of the program that the people who are asking to come coach it don't have the same feeling for.
Right.
And it may be, they may be living in the past a little bit. Philip Fulmer may fall into that category on some level. But hopefully they'll get back up. I mean, when Tennessee's good at women's basketball is better. That's my opinion.
I agree with that.
Now, real quick, two things. One is Wednesday, we also at that same show a couple of weeks ago, we had Brian Webb on here talking about the fact that he's going to go jump out of a perfectly good plane on Wednesday, and that's what he's doing this Wednesday.
That's still on.
With him. It's still on. We're going to go down there Wednesday morning. We're going to shoot some video. You can find a lot of stuff on the ESPNKY.com site later.
I'll tell him like I told a friend of mine who was getting ready to get married. It was up until we walked down that the aisle. I said, it's not too late. so
his wife really likes you.
Yeah, I know. It's was. She probably likes me now because they're gone. They split up. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week at 4:00.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.